Good morning or afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's SafetyChain Leadership Webinar, Food Safety Management Programs, Applications, Best Practices, and Compliance. I'm going to be interviewing Debby Newslow today, President of DL Newslow and Associates, and let's, before we begin, give you some announcements. I'm Barbara Levin. I'll be your host as well as one of your presenters today. Let me give you a few housekeeping announcements, and I have some background noise. So, Debbie, I'm not sure if you're able to get rid of some of that noise. Better now. Thank you. Folks, if you're having any technical issues, you can call WebEx Technical Support directly at 877-509-3239. A copy of the slides as well as a recording of today's event will be sent by email. You should have it by close of business tomorrow, Wednesday the 5th. We will be taking your questions. We're going to start with me interviewing Debbie, but we will take your questions. We'll come out of full screen and you'll be able to submit your questions at that time. And as always, we respect your privacy, and you can see the names of the presenters and hosts as well as your name, but not the names of the other attendees. Our agenda today is pretty simple. I'm going to be interviewing Debbie. Debbie has a new book, and one of our attendees today will receive a copy of that book. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about ISO and GFSI, FSMA, of course, and effectiveness of food safety programs and more. We're going to tell you a little bit about SafetyChain, your sponsor, and then we're going to open it up and have you ask questions from Debbie. So with that, I am really excited to introduce Debby Newslow. She's the president of DL Newslow and Associated, a really well-known and highly respected food safety expert. She's the winner of the 2013 NSF International Leadership Award for Food Safety Training. She's a frequent guest here at SafetyChain, and Debbie's got a new book, Food Safety Management Programs, Applications, Best Practices, and Compliance. This book has been getting fabulous attention in the food safety industry, and we're going to be interviewing Debbie to get some insights from that book. So, Debbie, welcome. We're so excited to have you back. How are you today?
Thanks, Barbara. It's good to be back. I appreciate the opportunity.
Debbie, before we go to our first question, I know that we were speaking before the webinar, and I know that your mom's been ill and that she's listening today. So before we get to that first question, why don't you say hi, and we all send wishes, and we'll go on to our questions.
Yes. Hi, Mom. I'm glad you're able to listen, and without you, this book never would have been possible. So, and I'll see you tomorrow. So great.
So
thanks,
everyone's sending good wishes out to Debbie's mom. And Debbie, let's go to the book. I don't know if you're able to do anything. There's a lot of background noise. I know that you are out at a client site and you've snuck into a conference room. So we'll be patient with that. But you know, Debbie, you and I have been talking about your book. I know you were very excited about it. And, you know, food safety folks today are just facing so many challenges from so many different directions, whether it's from customers, whether it's from industry, the regulating agencies. Can you talk about some of the challenges that folks are facing that led you to put this you know, toolkit book together?
Yes. Well, you know, as the food safety has evolved over the years, there's just been so much confusion over what really needs to be done, what's the best choice, how to proceed. The GFSI approved schemes all have a place in specific operations, but to try to really understand what the best choice for a specific operation is and then where to start has just proven to be so overwhelming. So, you know, based on what feels like 100 years of experience, along with the experience of a lot of folks that I've dealt with over those years, I felt like it would be good to just try to capture this and see where to go next. So a lot of folks just say, well, where do I start? You know, what do I do? It's not that companies don't want to do it. It's just how do we choose what to do and where do we start, which standard is best. So it really is all about understanding the requirements and how to apply them to a specific operation.
And you and I have also spoken about, it's, not even just where to start for companies just kind of building, but to be able to look at what you have and see how to revamp and how to change it as well. So let's go into some of the specific concepts. Debbie, in your book, you really talk about how food safety management systems relate to the three-legged stool concept. Can you elaborate on that and let us know what your thoughts behind that have been?
Yeah, in our training programs, our management system training programs, we've always talked about, the three-legged stool. Some people say a tripod, some people do the stool, but really we're looking at the support and what comes from having an effective management review, corrective preventive action, and internal audit programs. Through management commitment and having empowered teams, if these programs are strong, then almost 100% of the time the system itself will thrive and will be value added to the operation overall. If any of those legs of the stool start to falter, then you start to become concerned. I have personally worked with and audited the best of the best systems, but watched these systems basically self-destruct faster than I ever could have imagined, because one of these legs got weak. Maybe the internal audit program all of a sudden wasn't important, all the audits were late, or management review, management got together but really wasn't really effectively looking at the system. I've also experienced the flip side of this. I've seen just the most dysfunctional, scattered, struggling systems that have risen to be one of the best when management has ensured that the management review process, the internal audit process, and the corrective action process become effective and value added to the operation overall. So that's pretty critical. So that's what we talk about with the three-legged stool. Now, sometimes when I talk about HACCP, I talk about the three-legged stool and the fact that management commitment, again, team approach, having effective prerequisite programs. So it's all about the support and making sure that any of the legs of this stool or tripod, if you will, are strong and effective.
Thank you, Debbie. I think that we'll spend some time on this slide, right? So ISO 9001, it is the foundation for many systems. You and I have discussed, people have been debating ISO for 20 years. Companies understand the importance, but there's a lot of hesitation. Can you really walk us through why it's so important and some of these challenges that people have been debating and why it's important for folks to get over them and move to implementing some of these foundations?
Yeah, absolutely. The structure of an effective ISO 9001 management system provides an excellent foundation for any management system. However, in the past, as you said, in the early days of ISO and as ISO has evolved, it really hasn't been a popular standard for the food industry. But that said, personally, I've experienced some of the larger companies using this standard as a basis for their own internal programs. So it's sometimes hard to understand, but with the system structure and basic discipline that is inherent with such a system as an ISO 9001 program, it provides the excellent foundation for defining, implementing, and maintaining a value-added management system no matter what the focus. So understanding how it works and applying that aspect to it is really critical to the overall sustaining the system and developing one. And even though we may talk about other standards, SQF, BRC, still, having a half an eye on this focus and that discipline and structure really helps build onto it.
So Debbie, how does ISO fit in with the other standards? So, it's not a one or the other, or is it? Do companies that have GFSI schemes, also adopt here? I mean, I know that they're all connected, but how is this used in conjunction with some of the other schemes?
Well, the GFSI approved schemes includes FSSC 22000, and that includes ISO 22000.
Right.
However, and so that's obviously built on the shadow of 9001. But really, I think that whether we know it or not, when you read those standards, you really do see a lot of the original. 9001 was the original auditable standard, first released in '87, came to North America in '94 or '91. First food company was in March of '94, which was M&M Mars in Waco, Texas. And there were a couple others that were right close behind it. But this whole structure and the learnings from 9001, whether it's even referenced or whether it's really specifically understood, it's there, and it's a good foundation for structure and discipline, defining what's required for management commitment, for internal auditing, for some of these systems that before were stated as necessary for success, but specifics for what a successful process looks like really hadn't really been defined or addressed specifically.
So this debate, right? Yeah, no, that does make sense. So the debate, talking about cost and documentation. So, is the cost of doing ISO 9001, is it dramatically more than others? Why is this the debate?
Well, a lot of the debate became, originally ISO had a lot of bad press because it seemed like it required a lot of documentation. And the food industry overall, we have a lot of documentation, so do we really need another standard that wants more? As ISO evolved with a lot of its revisions, a lot of that requirement or just the perception of requirement for a lot of documents really kind of disappeared. When ISO went through 3 revisions and when it was revised in 2000, it actually only required 6 documents and any other documents that an organization might need. So again, it's funny because a lot of the big companies were using the whole ISO format to have their internal standards. So, in one breath, they said we really don't see the value of it. In another breath, they used a lot of that structure for internal and saw a lot of good success from it. So it's like anything, it's a tool, and it depends on how you use it and how you implement it. It can be a monster if it isn't done right, and it can be a very value-added tool within your system if it's done effectively. So it's all about how it's used.
Is there any kind of company that is more suited for ISO? Are you seeing it more in one vertical than the other, or is it really a good concept for across the board?
Well, the ISO standard is defined to be very generic, and it applies to whatever you do. I mean, you could have a trucking company that has a service. You could, manufacture orange juice. You could, make television sets. It's very generic, and the thing is just to have a competent resource, understanding, really how to translate it and integrate it into your system. That's the important thing, is integrate it into your system and not re-engineer your system. And that's kind of the same way whether you're talking food safety standards or whatever. So 9001 really kind of laid the groundwork from the beginning and through its evolution of revisions. And now the last revision was 2008, and now it's coming next year, 2015, is going to release another revision that's going to revamp it again, focusing on risk. So it's just, it's an evolution and understanding of what it means and how to integrate it into your system.
So this is a good lead-in, obviously, to talk about GFSI. I've been hearing from our customers a lot, companies that haven't been using GFSI are looking now. A lot of people feel it's going to help them prepare for FSMA. But can you talk about, I know that you think organizations, for the most part, should become certified to GFSI. Can you talk about why you think that's so important? And for companies that are deciding now to go for a GFSI certification, I mean, I know that we could probably do, a 3-day workshop on this, but, in a couple of minutes, what are some of the things companies need to think about when they're trying to decide what scheme is right for them?
So that's a lot of questions in one.
That's why I put all those bullets on that slide.
Yeah. But though really, GFSI, it's benchmark approved schemes. They have the guidelines that they want to see in a food safety standard, and then they check the standards submit to GFSI for approval if they meet their guidelines. So it's a very structured, it's a very well thought out set of guidelines, and there are various specific food safety standards that meet them. So that makes it very confusing and overwhelming. There are it depends on what you manufacture, what food sector you're in, which one that you really pick that is best for an operation. So really, it's important because, again, structure and discipline. Which standard you choose is really up to the organization, and the organization needs to really do their homework. They need to really review the standards. They need to review their food sector, understand what some of the requirements are. Some of the standards are more prescriptive. They have specific requirements that you must meet. Other standards like FSST 22000 isn't quite as prescriptive, but the prescriptive part of it is good for some companies that really need that discipline to start out with to really understand what they do. So it's really up to the organization. There is no cookbook answer, no specific answer that says if you make this product or if you're in this food sector that you need to use this particular standard. It's really up to the organization to really evaluate the requirements, check what's out there, read, study it. This book was so difficult to write, and it took a long time to write it because of the different standards out there. It actually, compares some of the requirements. It basically is made up of a toolkit, and it talks about the best corrective actions. It talks about the best way to do internal audits, how to handle specific prerequisite programs, and can be applied to any of the standards. However, it's up to the organization to take information such as this, information such as things that are on the Internet, going to the different, websites of the standards, interviewing people, really understanding what's really best for that organization that will add value. Because no matter what's chosen, it's up to the organization to do it in a manner that adds value to their operation, not they're just doing it because somebody's making them to, because that, again, that'll become a monster. That'll be something that they really are going to find, it's just nothing but a thorn in their side. They have to keep working, and honestly, it's going to take a whole lot more to resources and effort to maintain a compliant monster than it is to one that is compliant, that adds value, that's developed for the organization, and provides them the basis for not only the assurance or confidence of producing a safe product, but also continually improving and being able to grow and get better. It becomes a way of life if it's done right. If it's done wrong, it's just horrible to try to maintain. So I think that answered all of your questions.
And I have more. So, as we all know, right, SQF has just recently announced that beginning in June of this year, 1 out of every 3 audits is going to be unannounced. Do you think the other schemes are going to follow suit? What's your thought on that? Your crystal ball, Debbie.
BRC also, I believe, does an unannounced one. I spent a lot of years doing a lot of unannounced when I worked for Coca-Cola. We did a lot of unannounced GMP audits, and those are okay because you really see, what it is on an everyday operation. But with the systems approach, you really need to look at such a sampling of records that, whether it's unannounced or it's not announced, it depends on really the scope of the audit. And it's, you're looking at records, you're looking at evidence, not just looking at what it looks like today. You're looking at, the historical data. Are they doing their audits? The proof of effectiveness. How are they addressing findings? So, there's unannounced. The perception of that is that, you can't plan for it. But, a good system really doesn't plan for the audit anyways because you don't know what records audit is going to look for. You just know that you have to have records to demonstrate conformance. The problem with the unannounced is that sometimes you show up and if the right, people aren't there. Now, granted, the records should be there and they should substantiate it, but sometimes you can show up in a very inoperable time that can make it little more difficult to actually do an effective audit. But, you know, that we'll work it out because, like I said, there are pluses in both ways to see. But, you know, it's not a sneaky thing either. A company really needs to have a value-added program that they can defend and that they believe in, not like, you know, we're going to show up unannounced and set you in something, you know, we wouldn't see if you knew we were coming.
Right.
But, I mean, that's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. So, you know, Debbie, we know that if it were up to the food safety folks alone, you know, everybody would do this, and you know, we would do it for the reasons that you said, to do everything possible to deliver safer, higher quality products. We also know that, you know, sometimes it's hard to get money. You know, I mean, it's already a low profit margin industry. And I know that one of the things that you talk about is having a GFSI certification can help you actually be more competitive. What, can you share just, you know, some of your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot of the large companies now, the Walmarts, the Costco's, the Targets, you know, they're requiring their customers to be approved to a GFSI scheme. So obviously, if you're approved to one or you're working towards becoming approved, you know, that gives you a heads up, because if you don't have that, then where are you going to be? Now, companies, I mean, you're right. Everything takes resources, but again, it's a planning stage. You do it, you know, one day at a time. You adjust the resources. Technology, which we'll talk about later, is a positive resource. You know, people have said over the years, I have heard some of the most strange figures as to what it costs to be certified. And, you know, if you plan it right and you get the right, you know, you get help and, you know, the right kind of resource, the right kind of support, and you have enough time to do it, you know, you don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I mean, you can spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands if you really want to, but you don't have to. It's all about planning, it's all about integrating, and it's all about team support. I mean, if you have people tell me all the time, well, we don't have the resources, we don't have the help, but they might have a facility that has 300 associates running 3 shifts. So you know, empower the associates. Let them review documents. Let them be part of the system. And then all of a sudden, you have 300, you know, part-time resources, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon and becomes part of the team. So
there you
it really
go.
takes some thought and everything, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I mean, it just depends.
And like you said, if you can go out and get a customer that you might not have been able to get, then you start to see that ROI. Debbie, I know that this is one of your favorite topics, and mine too, actually. You know, management commitment is a part of certain schemes, but whether or not it's a part of a scheme, what's the importance, Debbie, and what are the components, and how is it measured?
Well, that's a good question, too. You know, management commitment from top management is essential. It's not only top management within the scope of the system, but it's top management within individual processes. You know, in the old days, when we used to audit and there were a lot of procedures, we would show up and we would take a procedure and go out in the line and ask the operator to explain, and do they follow the procedure, and they either did or they didn't, and then we were done. Now it all stems from, you know, how is management involved? Management needs to define policy statement, have measurable objectives, monitor the system through management review, ensure effective communication. I mean, they really need to be totally involved. And when we go in there, we'll ask about measurable objectives. How do you communicate? We'll ask associates, how do you know how the system's doing? What's your role in the system? All of that is evidence of how it's communicated down. And you can really see you can really tell the difference when a manager is really involved and when a manager is just passing the buck. But as these standards, when you talk about ISO 9000 like we did before, it really evolved over the years to where when it first came out, it said management must do this, and top management was able to assign it to someone else saying your management do it. Then it came out, and then it was revised in '94, and it said executive management. Well, when it was revised in 2000, it said, hey, top management. The top management within the scope, you guys got to be involved. You got to show evidence of what you do, how you communicate. How is this important? How do you know the system has enough resources to meet the goals? And if it doesn't, or what are you doing about it? And, you know, it's pretty impactful, and it's kind of neat because a lot of management who never really wanted to buy into this now are just excited and just love it because they say that, you know, they don't know how they ever operated without it, and they'll never operate without it in the future. And I've had management say, I've said to them, I said, well, is it worth it? And they said, you know, they'll say absolutely, because although it doesn't guarantee food safety, what it does is instead of maybe having a 50,000 case recall, we might have 500 cases on hold because, you know, we have our ducks in a row. We have people empowered and, you know, everybody takes ownership and responsibility.
And when, and if you've got a scheme that does require management commitment, and what are some of the things that companies can avoid? Because that is an area where companies do kind of get dinged for some non-conformances. So what are some best practices there?
Well, you know, pretty much all the schemes all require management commitment. And the requirement for management equipment, even back when Codex Alimentarius, the guidelines for HACCP, was first released, even back in the 1960s, it said this isn't going to be successful without management being involved and be committed. That's all it said. It had one sentence. It didn't say what management commitment was or how you measure it or what was necessary, but it said management needed to support the program. So, you know, we pretty much see it and how, you know, we look at, you know, what kind of goals has management identified? How do they communicate these goals to the folks, and how do folks really feel like they're part of the team, and how do you really, impact that? You know, what about the different managers of the areas? You know, one time I did an audit and, you know, they had a management review and they had all the department managers were there and they all talked about the goals and where you are and everything. And then I went and audited one of the process areas and, you know, even though the purchasing manager had been at management review, nobody in that department knew anything about goals and objectives. They didn't even know what role they played in meeting those goals and objectives. So as you can see, that would be a stumbling block. How does it start from the top, and how does it cascade down through all levels? I mean,
through all levels.
So critical. I mean, you know, you look at, you have the goals. The management team identifies measurable goals, and then they make sure they have the resources, and they monitor it through measurable objectives. And if they find they're not meeting their objectives, then they need to look at their resources again. Do they need to revise their objectives, or do they need to add more resources? So it's pretty simple when we talk about it. It's easier said than done, obviously.
Sure.
It's interesting. When I do some of these audits, and I don't mean to ramble, but, you know, it's really interesting to me because I have some clients and the top management, they're awesome. When we show up for an audit, you know, management, plant managers and stuff, you know, they're busy. They got a pretty good schedule. But some of them put everything aside and they spend as much time as they can in the audit, and it's obvious that they want to be there not only to support the system, but also to learn. Others, you know, you show up and they're not even there and they've gone fishing. Now, some of those other standards require them there. And some of the standards require evidence of it, but, you know, over time they need to be there to demonstrate it. So, I mean, so that's where you really can see the difference. But the results are there, too. Are they meeting their objectives, and do they have a successful system? Wouldn't happen without management support.
Right. And I love asking you those questions because I know how passionate you are. We can hear it in your voice. So, you know, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because, you know, we do a lot of FSMA webinars and whatnot. But, you know, you can't really have any food safety webinar these days, obviously, without talking about FSMA. Debbie, kind of high level, you know, what do you think the impact is going to be on a company's food safety system? And, you know, the things that you've been talking about, GFSI and evaluating schemes, how close is that going to get you to where you're going to need to be, you know, we're talking now 2016, you know, when first companies are going to have to comply?
Well, that's a really good question, and I don't think none of us know for sure the answer, because I've seen, you know, these regulations where you're almost positive, you know, juice trade was like that years ago, and you're almost positive what it was going to say, and then it comes out and, wow, where'd this come from would be one of the answers. So, you know, we're not sure where FSMA is going and with the requirements, and we won't know this until really it's finalized and officially enacted. In the meantime, you know, we urge, you know, folks that I work with and myself and in the book, we urge companies to focus on their food safety programs, developing and maintaining them in an effective manner that's good for their operation. And I feel strongly that an effective food safety program compliant with one of these benchmarks GFSI approved schemes will be ready for what FSMA brings us. We don't have a crystal ball, just like understanding the standard of choice. It's important to have a reliable, experienced source of information related to FSMA and all that it includes. But a lot of people are real worried about, are we going to be ready? Are we going to be ready? When you have an effective program, when you have the preventive controls in, like for HARP-C and some of these other issues, you're going to be close. You're going to, we don't know what exactly the wording's going to be, what exactly who it's going to be, but applying the concepts for a food safety management program makes good business sense. And whether FSMA wants you to, whether your customer wants you to, you as a business owner should want to, because it gives you confidence in the tools and the foundation to produce and to be confident that you're producing a safe product. Doesn't guarantee it, but it forces you to really look.
But it can get you close. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So Debbie, let's talk about the book. Your book provides, it's a toolkit, right? It's not a cookbook. So if companies want to revamp their plans, what are some basic steps to get started? Because you've got this great toolkit, but where should companies start? In addition to reading your book, of course. But can you walk us through some of that?
Yes, sure. It's important to become familiar with the individual standards. And is there one that, is better for an operation or a food sector than another? That's really going to be up to the company itself to do their investigation and to, figure out what's best for them, what fits them. And some companies have actually picked one and then switched over to another one, just because, they needed the structure and discipline maybe for one, and then, had to switch to the other one. So, basically, you want to look at the gaps. We want to figure out from a food safety point of view, from a specific standard point of view, or just an overview, what are your gaps? I tell people it's kind of like trying to fix a broken leg. A doctor should never, hopefully never, tries to set a broken leg until they have the x-ray to see exactly what they have to do. And that's kind of what it is with the gap analysis. This book is not a cookbook either. I mean, I had someone tell me the other day, I wish you had gotten more specific with some of the stuff that, like process flows or something. But, it's difficult to be that specific when you're looking at just giving a tool that that can be applied in an effective management program or management system. And, I'm very much against the cookbook type things. I'm very much against, if you have a certain thing, you're going to go to the internet and download it and then put your name on it. You need something that's value added for your operation. And this book is designed to give you tools, to give you examples. It has key points at the end of the chapters. It also has several pages of common findings that based on the audits that we've done and the systems that have been involved, that here are a lot of the things that we see a lot. So it gives you a heads up to make sure you address it. And it also contains a lot of quotations from, as is my first book back in 10 years ago in 9001 in the food industry. It's quotes and it's interesting information from those people out there in the trenches actually doing it and setting it up. What was the hardest part? What was the most value-added part? How did you address, say, management commitment? And it's interesting to hear some of this input. And really, if you're going to do it, you really need to, do your homework. You need to figure out, where are you going to need. It's kind of like planning a trip. If you're going to go from New York to Miami, are you going to drive? Are you going to take a plane? Do you need a map? Do you need airline tickets? You need to really, it's a journey. And it's basically that's what it is. It's a journey, and you need to plan your journey as the best you can. You can get to Miami by way of Los Angeles, but it's not very effective. Not as hard as you fly it, but if you drive it, you can spend a lot. So really plan. I mean, interview people, talk. If you get a consultant or someone to help you, make sure it's somebody that knows your industry, your food sector, the standards. Make your own, make your own decisions based on your operation, and you know, do some planning and take it one step at a time. When you try to be in a hurry, you tend to throw things together, and it's very difficult to pass an audit when you throw things together. But even if you pass the audit, then when you get through, the sustainability is almost negligible. It'll just self-destruct. Then you start over again. So, you know, it's kind of like build a house. Do it one step at a time and do it in a manner that's going to, might take longer, but it's once you get it done, it's going to sustain itself.
It's going to last, and it's going to work for you. Sorry about that. I have no idea what just happened with the slides there. Debbie, last question for you before we going to tell us a little bit about SafetyChain, and then take questions from the audience. You know, technology, of course we know that's always my favorite topic, but you're a great proponent of technology. It's one of the reasons our companies partner together. What's the role of technology in today's programs, Debbie?
That's, you know, it's interesting because, you know, when I first started doing the standards and stuff, I saw some of the worst technology. I saw just things that people would purchase and people would buy. They thought it would help them, and all it did was strangle them. But as times have evolved and things such as, you know, yours is just become an excellent resource. You know, it's important to understand that, you know, the knowledge and it's important to understand the role of technology. Each of the approved schemes require that resources are managed by top management. Resources can be many things. Money, of course, we talked about the cost. It can be associates, trained associates. It can have the right equipment, doing the right things, the time needed to do what is needed, and so much more. Technology can be such a great resource. I mean, I have seen teams spend weeks gathering data, weeks and weeks preparing charts and different things to report to top management, you know, doing everything manually. And then with the right technology program, they can provide the same information with one or two keystrokes. I mean, if your resources are an issue, you don't want your valuable associates to be out there, you know, pushing and shoving paper around, trying to build charts by hand when, you know, when you can push one or two keys and get the reports probably even more, and they'll be even more accurate than trying to do them manually. And, you know, associates need to be in the operation doing what they do best and let the data programs track and report what's needed. And, you know, Barbara, you and I have talked about this many times, and we've laughed about it and joked about it because, you know, back in the old days, you know, 20 years ago or so when I first started doing the audits, still seems like 100 years ago, you know, we'd go into a facility and we'd want to do a mock recall as part of the audit. And we would have to go in there at the opening meeting, and we needed to know exactly what we were looking for and give the dates and the product and everything. And 48 hours was a good time frame for them to complete this. So, you know, everything was manual. People are, you know, 4 or 5 different individuals had to go take off and have to start putting things together.
Sure.
And now we've joked because now 48 minutes is a long time that people can actually push. You do a couple keystrokes, and all of a sudden they have all the information.
And there you go.
Right there in front of them. And two, I mean, what, God forbid, if a company really had an emergency and really had a real recall, you don't want to spend 2 days trying to figure out where that product went. You want to know as fast as you can, and now you can do it in, you know, about 5 minutes in some cases, and that's critical. I mean, that could save lives. And plus, that said, it's also going to allow your associates to be able to do what they do best, and you can use this data to not only track what's been done and as far as track what's been done and where product's going, but also as a continuous improvement opportunity to show, you know, certain, you know, trends and things like that. So I mean, it's critical, and it's important that companies use this. Now, sometimes people look at it, and again, you go back to the money and everything, but to the cost, but I mean, I still get grief on internal audits when I tell people that when you have an audit, you need a representative from the area with you. Well, we can't afford that. We didn't budget for it. Well, you know, I don't really see how you budget not to have it, just like some of this technology is essential to an effective operation.
Well, and technology, I think people are starting to look at it now as a way to actually save money as opposed to an expense. Debbie, very, very helpful. Of course, you know, this is my favorite topic, is technology. I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to tell you a little bit about SafetyChain for food, leading food safety chain management system, and take just a few minutes from that, and then we'll get some questions from the audience. I've taken us out of full screen, folks. If you've got a question for Debbie, you can enter it in the lower right-hand side and hit send, and we'll get those queued up. So let's talk about food safety and quality assurance technology. And, you know, we're very excited that, you know, we're seeing just a really huge adoption happening now of food safety chain management systems. So what are these? Well, you know, if you think about the supply chain, you've got things that are coming in, and you've got things that you're doing with them, and you're sending it someplace. So, you know, whether it's raw materials coming in, if you're a manufacturer, you're sending something off, wherever you are in the supply chain. Food safety chain management is going to automate, streamline, and improve food safety and quality assurance for you. It's going to help enforce and document FSQA at all points in your supply chain. There's real-time electronic data collection and analysis to specs. When any deviation is detected, automatic alerts go out. So you can keep non-compliant ingredients from coming in, non-conforming finished products from going out, and there's huge ROI there. If you can keep a non-compliant ingredient out of production, you know, just right then and there, there's less rework. You might get less destruction of product, less manual labor. It's going to help ensure food safety and quality assurance workflow and processes and all of the records, and it has a central repository of food safety data for trending, for assessments, reports, and on-demand audit readiness. So as you said, you know, click of a mouse, all of the information that you need versus days and days of having to do a root cause analysis or get ready for an audit. Our food safety chain management solution here is called SafetyChain for Food, and we help companies in 5 key areas. In the area of supplier compliance, of FSQA program management, process management, and on-demand audit readiness by automating all of your FDA programs. We have a module for every GFSI scheme for customer audits, internal audits, and we've also got SafetyChain Mobile so that information can be captured at the field. Again, this is all real time, information coming in real time, being analyzed to spec in real time with alerts going out when there's a problem. So instead of having people spend those days that Debbie discussed going through 500 documents to find the 2 that need action, they're getting alerts when there's a nonconformance. So a lot of value there. Because this is real time, it's your smoke alarm in the cloud. This is a preventive program. It's not a track and trace. This is designed to proactively prevent food safety and quality problems before they start versus reactively having to go out and figure out where those problems started and how to repair the damage. And that's all we're going to say now because we want to get to some questions. I'm going to give you a little bit of information here. One lucky person who's attending today, and we'll notify you by the end of the day today, is going to get a free copy of Debbie's book. For the rest of you, if you'd like to read Debbie's book, you can order it directly from CRC Press, and this information will also be in the follow-up email that we're going to send you by close of business tomorrow. You'll be able to download this recording and the slides, and we'll put this information. There's a code there that will give you a free shipping and a 20% discount. And if you've got questions for Debbie and just want to chat with her about any of the concepts, I've got all of Debbie's information there. You can learn more about services from Debbie's company. SafetyChain, if you, when you get this email with the slides and the demo, if you'd like any additional information, an ROI calculator, because our customers are finding that the system is paying for itself and then creating hard dollar ROI in a very short time, a demo, pricing, info at SafetyChain, or you'll be able to click on those requests in the email. We've got some great events coming up. we're going to be showing you SafetyChain for food with a demo and talking about more in depth the concepts of how SafetyChain management helps you automate, streamline, and improve food safety. Our next FSMA Friday is on sanitary transport, and if you're going to be at the Pet Food Forum, Food Safety Summit, or American Spice Trade Association, you can come and visit us. Debbie and I are doing a workshop at ASTA, and with that, if you have to leave us to go on to your next meeting, everybody, thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions here that I'm going to throw to you, Debbie. Debbie, I have a question from Jonathan, and he's saying we're just now starting the process of becoming SQF certified. Are there any best practices or standards on approximately how long it should take for a company to go through the certification and training process? I know that there's really, that answer could be anything, but maybe you've got some thoughts there.
Yeah, great. Hi, Jonathan. Really, it all depends on your resources, and I know that we keep saying that, and that's not a direct answer. But basically, again, it goes back to the gap analysis. You need to figure out, and there are some really good, SQF provides excellent checklists, and there's some other really good sources for some good checklists for SQF. You really got to look at your operation and see what do you have, what is the requirement, and what do you have, and then what are the gaps. And then depending on the gaps and the resources you have to put those gaps, that will help you identify the time frame. If you have, a team of 1 or 2 people that have to do everything, that's going to take a while and probably not the most effective. But if you have, implementation teams, for instance, that may cover the maintenance requirements or different things that can be working simultaneously to address the gaps, that helps. Typically, 8 to 12 months for, to really get a system that is, is strong and one that you have tried and proven, and you may have set it up and then you've audited it or you've managed it and then you continually improve it. You do need 3 to 6 months of records, no matter what, in order to go forward, because you have to show that you've had the system up and operating and what you've been doing as far as how to measure the effectiveness. So probably, minimum 6 months, but it's tough unless you get the National Guard to help you to really have an effective system in 6 months. But again, it depends on what you have and how you approach it and how you use the resources that you do have.
Great, thank you. Susan is asking about the SafetyChain diagram modules, if this is all one system or if they're separate. So I wanted to go back to this slide here for a moment. The system is an integrated system that can be used as one full, comprehensive safety and quality suite. But each one of these boxes that you see is also modular. So, we understand, that people have spent money on technology. Maybe you have an ERP system or maybe you've got a document management system. You're not in a position to just have to tear out and throw away investments that you've already made. So, we've got people that use our SQF module or a BRC module, or they use all of our HACCP compliance tool, or FSQA program management. We've got customers that just do all their supplier programs with us. So, one of the things that's great is, most companies are still very manual. They want to automate everything. The great thing about the solution is it is a comprehensive solution. People tell me that they thought they'd have to go to 3 or 4 vendors to get all of this, but you don't have to do it all at once. If you're going from a completely manual system and you want to do, full automation, chances are you're going to want to take it a chunk at a time so you can go through change management. So hope that answers the question. It's all integrated. You can use all of them, or you can use just the pieces that you need to complement what you already have. Debbie, got a question from Larissa for you saying, how is SQF comparable to USDA regulations? It looks like SQF actually requires more than USDA does.
Yes, I mean, it depends on which part of USDA you're looking at. you know, if you're looking at the regulations, you know, for meat and poultry, that focuses on HACCP. It focuses on CCPs and so forth, where SQF is the full system approach. USDA, you know, typically, and the government, they're not as much of a systems approach as the system standards, obviously. So, you know, they may, for instance, like HACCP Principle 7 talks about, you know, you have records and documents, but it doesn't really tell you about how the best way to do that and really what records and documents you need. But when you look at an SQF system or an FSSC system or any of the approved GFSI schemes, you know, it says, you know, you need a document control procedure, and here's a minimum that you need in order to have an effective document control. So, you know, it is more involved, but it's more of an umbrella where the other requirements kind of fit inside. And it does help you to document them, ensure you're compliant with them, and improve on them also.
Good, thank you. And Debbie, it looks like that was our last question. So again, thank you everybody for your questions, for participating with us today. Debbie, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll include the information about the book and the discount there. And everybody have a great day, and we hope to see you online soon at another SafetyChain event. Have a great day, everybody.